everyone, and welcome to Roll and Keep, the weekly show where we do things like playing, teaching, learning, building, and so many great things with Cortex Prime, using a wide variety of genres and settings and different ways to put things together. My name is Mellie Doucette. I am the community manager for Cortex Role-Playing and D&D Beyond, and I'm very, very excited to introduce you all to, assuming you don't already know him, the designer of Cortex Prime, currently working on Tales of Xadia, the Dragon Prince role-playing game, and Legends of Grayskull, the Masters of the Universe role-playing game, Cam Banks. Hello, Cam.
Hello, Mellie.
How are you today?
I'm well. It's nice and windy and cold down here in sunny New Zealand.
Excellent, excellent. I'm very jealous. It's starting to warm up again here, and I don't want it to happen. But hey, enough of my complaining that you all hear all the time. I'm very jazzed to get to introduce our special guest for today. She co-hosts the Tights and Fights podcast, writes for Honest Trailers, and is currently being just absolutely amazing on Dimension 20's Misfits and Magic, Kids with Broom show. It's Danielle Radford. Welcome, Danielle.
Oh, geez. I hope I can live up to that. I'm so nervous. I want to make sure that I do this right because this sounds awesome. I want to build worlds.
Yes! Oh, it's going to be so amazing. You're going to do great. I'm very, very excited. For those of you who are not familiar, Cortex Prime is a modular, multi-genre toolkit role-playing system that lets you build pretty much any world or genre that you could possibly want to play in. And this week and next week, Danielle here is going to build her own new original Cortex Prime setting live here on the show. And hey, if you get inspired and you want to build your own, you can check out cortexrpg.com and you can get the digital version of the Cortex Prime game handbook, and that's what you need to start building. And we're also going to give away some copies of that digital edition here in the chat, so keep an eye out for those keywords when they pop up. With all that said, I mean, I'm really, really excited to get started. Cam, Danielle, you guys ready?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Yeah, okay, Danielle, first things first, this is your moment to build the setting of your dreams. Tell us a little bit about the kind of game that you really want to create today.
Okay, so this is a PG-13 show, so we're going to keep it PG-13. But I really love soap operas, and I really love things that are soapy, and like hospital dramas, showgirls. Like those are some of the things that I really love. I know that I just mentioned showgirls as a like a soap opera, but it's one of the things that I love. So I want to see if we can build some kind of fantasy or sci-fi world that lives in the world of narrative soap operas where our players can really get into, not just fights, but also getting into some like fights, meaning like hair pulling and pulling out receipts and things like that. Like that's the kind of thing that I want to get into because those are things that I love as a human.
I absolutely love the sound of that, and I will say, hey, Cortex is a great game to explore things that are more about, relationship drama and having these great things. I think this is going to be awesome. Cam, so we know the general idea that we're going for here. Where would you suggest that we start?
Well, the good news is this game has been used in previous iterations to, I think, pretty well accurately map out Smallville, which was, as everyone knows, that 10-season CW TV show where everyone was against each other all the time and it was constantly drama and there was a bit of action, but also a lot of like, oh no, tell me your secret. I will never tell you my secret, and then that kind of stuff. The reason I think that is a good idea for this in terms of the sort of scope that you're looking for, Danielle, is that with that kind of approach with Cortex, you can have player v player sort of conflict that doesn't make the players get really mad at each other. So the sort of the initial gist of what I would say, if we can drive towards it in the game mechanics, is where the game moderator, the person who's running the game, their main job is to instigate little fights between the players, and the players can make characters who are at odds with each other or be best buds with each other, and it can wax and wane as the game goes. So we call that driving wedges between players, and it's a really fun thing to do because the GM's like, oh no, you both like this one person, and this person seems to be deciding whether they like you or not, which one's which. And in true soap opera fashion, no one settles for some sort of polyamorous situation, which is the ideal solution. No, instead they have to have this one-on-one thing. So, and but I think that's what I think would be my suggestion is if we sort of think about that in terms of the scope of the players being not necessarily in a party, like not they don't have to be like all best buds and squad and up, but everyone has their own agenda, everyone has their own feelings, motivations, relationships with each other, and then the GM gets to just mess with that every week, just constantly just mess with it.
Oh man, this excites me. Also, I just want to point out because it's one of my favorite things about Cortex, and not every version of Cortex uses it as contests. Is one of kind of the main kinds of conflicts you can use. Not everything has it, but what I like about it and what's going to work really well with this is it can go between players or it can go between like a player and a GM character. But it's one of those things where if you beat somebody in a contest, you didn't get what you wanted. You didn't force them to do anything. You're giving them complications or you're stressing them out if we're using that. It's only if you are in a contest and you say, you know what, I don't think I can win this, and I'd rather give myself a benefit I can use later, so I'm going to give in. So I'm going to give you what you want. This is the thing you want to slander me in this blog. Okay, fine. I'm not going to contest it. I'm going to take this plot point that's the meta currency of this game, put it in my pocket, and let's have the drama. I get to kind of decide the consequences of that, and it's great because it shows that you can kind of consent to the drama and not be forced to just be like, oh, you beat me in this dice roll, so my life is ruined. Darn.
Oh, I love a plot point. Ah,
Yes. I also love
The other
so
cool
yes,
thing
this
about
is gonna be
if the whole idea about winning a contest is also that, like you said, you don't get to necessarily get what you want, but you do push and put the stress on the other player. And so they may decide, I'm done with having so much saddled with complications and things. I'm just going to say, okay, fine. The actual decision to go along with the characters and things can happen in between contests. So we can have a contest. I did this thing. I make you feel super insecure about yourself, but you're still not giving me what I want. Then you, as a player, can go, do I want my character to continue to be hindered by this insecurity that I've got? Or do I just want to say, okay, fine, you take it, and I'm going to go away and recover this? So, yeah, there's a lot of this whole player agency, player consent, but also kind of like a bit of a carrot and a stick. There is this idea that you'll make each other kind of suffer a bit first before you...
You're gonna push each other's buttons and see who breaks first. In a fun way, in a great way. I do love contests; they're just very fun. But hey, all right, so we've got this idea. We can definitely do so far. This sounds great. Should we be starting with characters, or should we be starting with more setting stuff? What do you think?
Yeah, so this sounds like a very character-centric game, but I do think, though, that characters need to exist in somewhere that we kind of have a bit of a focus on it. I like to sort of break this down always, Danielle, into sort of this idea. There's these major questions you want to ask yourself. The first one's going to be like, who am I playing? Who are you playing this game? Like, who are these characters? And are they going to be movie actors? Are they going to be fantasy type, dungeon crawler people? Are they what? The second thing is, where do they live? Well, what's this place that they're in? What's the setting? And what kind of things, or what do you do in this world, I should say. It's not necessarily about what the world is, but what is it that you're doing? Because that's important. We want to know if they are dungeon crawling, that's the main focus of the story, that's great. Are they just talking about dungeon crawling because they used to do it when they were kids, and now they're adults and they've grown out of it? That kind of thing is interesting to look at too. And so the third thing is, what is the central conflict of your setting, of your world, right? So who do you play? What do they do? And what's the central conflict? Those are the three big questions we have, and then everything else kind of just hangs off that. And we can talk more about game mechanics later. But I think our first session is really good to dive deep into what you want and what the answers to these questions are.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect. Okay, so sorry, I dipped down because I had to go. I'm a Virgo, so I'm taking notes, even though I know I've been told I don't have to. I'm still gonna. So my idea is new girl in town. So that's the character, is that a new girl has come into town or village or wherever it is that we are at. She is a dungeon crawler reluctantly, and she has a secret. Those would be my three big ones.
Okay, so is that the sort of approach for question for the entire game that you want to build? Do you want the game to be about someone new coming to town, or because I guess what I was maybe didn't want to communicate. Everyone's gonna make their own characters, and that's the question: is
Right.
who are these characters in general? Like, what kind of people are they? Are they all the new people who are showing up, and therefore they have to sort of interact in this world that they haven't really been in before, and they're all newcomers? Or are you talking about
Oh.
yeah?
Or
Right.
is it like
So
everybody is playing somebody who's in this town when a new person comes in and it starts the drama train?
Yeah,
no, you
everyone
could
is in this
have
town,
yeah
and then they
one of
all
the sort
have
of
money. Yeah.
yeah.
They're all kind of
So
rich people who have money, much like a dynasty almost. Like, so they're rich people with money, and all of them have secrets. It's not just that one person.
mm,
Everyone has a
Yeah.
secret. And some people are dungeon crawlers and some people are not. Some people like pay dungeon crawlers and things like that. But yeah, that would be
I'm
the
getting
big thing is that like,
like almost like a Housewives of Fantasy World vibes.
right.
yeah, that's exactly right. Yes.
What is it like? Real Housewives of Stormkeep or something? You know, like it's like oh okay. Um, I'm also intrigued by this idea that this sort of the main industry in this world, or this at least this part of this world, the setting that you're talking about, is the whole dungeon crawling economy. Like people go out there and get stuff, and they haul it back to town, and then we pay them for it, or we have to supply them with all the fantasy stuff that they normally have to do. I don't think anyone's ever really looked at that aspect of the classic fantasy genre, right? What are the machinations that go on behind the scenes as people in the actual cities and towns that dungeon crawlers come into? What's going on there? So that may be a thing that we're looking at here too.
Yeah, almost like a just to reference another game, almost like a Harvest Moon, where it's like you have someone who does a lot of the mining, and it'll be several people who do the mining. So some people are dungeon crawlers, and they're defeating dragons and picking up loot and all of that stuff. And then some people are benefactors, where they're like, I pay and supply you in order for you to go do this thing because I'm not going to do it. I'm very fancy. Look at my robes. So that kind of thing.
Yeah, you're going and you're mining and farming and dungeon crawling and dragon slaying. I'm dragon slaying in my own way. I have a problem. We both wore the same dress to the masquerade ball, and that's a very important dragon to slay for my reputation.
Yes, problematic. Yes. And then in some ways it will also, because I assume these people are rich and terrible, rich and terrible people can also, because they are, rich, terrible people can also maybe pit their slayers against each other. So there can be like games and like fights and things like that where they're like, oh, well, today is it's the fancy game where I dress up, obviously, accordingly. You wore the same dress as me to the big tournament, and now my guy has to defeat your guy. And that's how we know that I'm better than you because I mean, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, all of these rich people, their whole thing is like, you ain't better than me.
So it's a little bit of like this kind of fantasy, a bit of comedy, a bit of courtly intrigue, and soap opera, like framing all of that. And
Yes.
I'm already so delighted by this. It's so great.
The cool thing is too, because of the way that the structure's out, you don't have to have. I mean, one player could be the archmage of town, and that does not give them any more benefit necessarily than the person who's playing head of the merchant guild, lady whose husband is long missing, no one knows where he went, but she's now in control, kind of situation, right?
Where did
Because
he go? No one knows.
power and influence are all sort of currency in this, as well as magic and I guess a big sword.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
Okay, so this is to tell you who we play and hey, where we live. And so it sounds like what we're doing is hey, we are these benefactors of others. We use our money that we've gained through these other means, and hey, we might be at different levels, but we are just kind of all managing this and experiencing this and conflicting with one another. And correct me if I'm wrong, Danielle. Seems like the main conflict in this is between each other and between other characters that the GM might introduce. So that's like conflict number one. That's our main focus. Is there anything else that you want to make sure, like, okay, so that's kind of our main thing, but are there other things we want to make sure we include when we're thinking about ways that the players interact with the game?
I mean, I think that also people can be trying to rise and fall through the ranks, because this is so much about power and control. There are
Yeah.
people who are like,
Mhm.
well, if I'm doing better at this tournament, then I get to be someone who is seen more favorably, and I get better patrons and I get more benefactors and more people who are trying to get us money. And at the same time, over here, it's kind of an upstairs downstairs thing, like if you watch a lot of those British shows. And meanwhile, over here, you have people who are also they want the best people to rise and benefit them, while they're also dealing with their own kind of selfishness and their own morals and values, and like, oh no,
Yeah.
he touched the back of her cheek, what are we gonna do now?
Yeah. Yeah, the
Oh, he
Bridgerton
touched the hem
level
of her
of
garment.
just like, this is the
Mhm.
very important
Bridgerton is a
things we need to care about.
Yes,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
So we've got these two classes of people who are both like after their own things, and their things also benefit each other, because if you are one of these fighters and all of a sudden your patron, someone touched the hem of her garment in public, and now suddenly you have to try to fight back because people think of you as being lower class, then can become a thing.
Oh,
Right.
nice.
Okay.
So
So, and do we want to have,
mm,
like, players could be the benefactors, the people. So we've already discussed. Yeah, we want that. We want them to be those rich people. Do we also want to have them have the option though to be the downstairs to so one,
Absolutely. Yeah.
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 So you can have a couple people at the table who are like, yeah, I'm the cook of this household, and so I know all these secrets, and I'm the lady and all these things. You get some like Downton Abbey, like we're gonna see all the different sides that are happening in this world. Okay,
It sounds a little bit
sick.
to
Yeah,
me
and then
like almost. Yeah, sorry. The upstairs downstairs thing is you've got the elite of the city, who are the people who do have movers and shakers, but want to do the whole climbing up the ladder thing. And the downstairs are actually like the fighters, the thieves, the rogues, the people who go out and do dungeony stuff and bodyguard stuff and the usual kind of stuff that's labor and actual physical stuff that people need to do. But they want reputation, right? They also want to have fame and
Yes.
glory and things too. So if their patron is looking really bad, do they shop around for a new patron? Right? I don't know if
Or do they
Absolutely.
take their place?
I mean, I think that in this we can definitely have a mechanic where if you get enough, unlike where in some things where it's all about like bloodlines, because I think like that bloodline stuff is kind of whack. You
Yeah.
can actually
Yeah.
earn your way into being
Yeah.
an upper class person by having great deeds and being known as having someone who does great deeds.
Yeah. And that sounds like kind of the idea. You said that the people that are rich right now were because they did all that stuff. They were
Mhm.
dungeon crawlers back in the day, and then they got really successful. So now they just get to like pay other people to do that. So it does create this, culture where, yeah, you can social climb literally in some cases as you scale a dungeon wall. And I think that makes it really interesting the way that you could have, yes, I'm a benefactor for you, but also I'm threatened by you and your youth
Mm.
and strength and roguish ability to pick locks. Oh no.
And what do you do if you get demoted too? Like if you fall from grace, what happens to you? Oh no. I'm a veteran knight of whatever, and I've got tons of history and background, but I'm old now, and I'm this. Oh, hang on, I've just completely lost all reputation with the locals. I've got to go back into the business again. right? I spent
Mm-hmm.
20 years as an elite. Now I have to go ahead and do the
I've been out
sword
of the game
smashing
for 20
again.
years.
Yeah, pull me back in.
And it's especially easy if you're like someone in a class where you're performative. If you're like a bard or like you perform, it's especially easy because you get to tell stories and you get to charm your way up the ladder. And then for some people it might be a little bit more difficult, because I think it's a lot harder to stab your way up the ladder than it is to
Well,
like sing a
I
song
mean,
about how you might have
depends who you're
stabbed your way. Well,
stabbing.
depending on who you're stabbing.
I
mhm.
think that that's
I
interesting
mean,
Exactly.
too, because everybody cares about reputation, because that's kind of like the currency in the realm, is that yes, the upstairs are going to kind of have their own dramas and the downs are going to have their own dramas, but together they're going to have dramas because it's a balance. It's when I'm an upstairs person and a downstairs person starting to get close, some drama, some soap drama that I might want to go into is that I might start sabotaging them and I might want to be trying to knock
mhm.
them down a few pegs. So I think that it works to have a table with a mix of people, because you're all gonna somehow need to impact somebody else's reputation to boost your own. Only so many people can be rich and famous.
And as we know, there
Yeah,
are
that is the way
countless.
capitalism works. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes,
Oh no. Oh no. It got really sad.
but it's also it's a class study too, right? I mean, it's a great way to sort of hang lampshade over the fact that classism is bad too, and we should probably not do that. But yeah, okay. Um,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm super into this idea also of your gathering your reputation, your fame, and glory, and so forth, kind of helps you elevate, and not who you were born as. I think that you could also extend that to this idea that things like magic items and swords and things are only as good as the legends that they have built around them, for example. So
Mm.
rather than make a +5 sword from scratch, you're going to have to earn it through deeds and actions as well, right? So
Yeah.
if everyone recognizes that that's the sword of so and so, then it gets to be more powerful in the world. So just like people get better because they're famous and well regarded, then so do items and things too.
Mm.
Just
Yeah,
throwing
because I
that
mean,
out
come
there
on,
as
that's
an
just a
idea.
That's
sword. I'd
great. I
never heard
love
of
that.
it.
No, I love it. Yeah.
Cam, so
Yeah.
can you explain for us, because Quartz is kind of built around having, sets of traits that kind of tell the story of your character, and that's what you roll from. Can you sort of explain for us how trait sets work, and where we might want to start, as now we're going to figure out, we know who these characters are, how do we put them together?
Okay. So yeah, Cortex characters are all built from trait sets, and the trait sets in traditional games would be things like attributes, ability scores, skills, um, powers, that kind of thing, right? So in Cortex, you get to choose what those sets are. You don't have to have them be the same normal ones as everyone else gets. What you do want to do is pick at least you need two of them, which are your prime sets. These are the ones that in every dice roll you make, you're going to include a dice from one of these in this one prime set and another one from another one. So those two together become like the basis. There's always a third one called distinctions, which is a trait set that almost all games have. And there are three of those normally, and they're kind of like your elevator pitch for your character. So if you have a character who's got, you might even say, I'm a, uh, you know, veteran fighter. I am quick with a quip, and I super love dogs. Right? Those could be your
Yeah,
three
or maybe you have your
distinctions.
secret as one of those.
Right. We can get into what the
Mm.
distinctions are later, but the important thing to start with is what are the prime sets for your game? And so if you were doing a completely sort of traditional sort of fantasy game, you might go with, oh, I have attributes and I have skills, I have strength and I have sword fighting, I have this and I have this. I think that we leave that to those traditional games for this one, because this is more about, wait, who am I and what do I believe, and what's my current relationship with everybody else around me, right? And so I'm going to suggest that we go with values as one of the prime sets and
Mm.
relationships as a second one. So that every single dice roll you make is about what I think about and believe, and who I'm actually interacting with, or who it's for, who it's about. And so the stronger and more intense my relationship, the more likely I am to succeed. And the stronger I believe about something, the more likely I am to succeed too. So if you go into some kind of contest or conflict with a kind of don't really care much about this. I don't really know them. I don't really care much about them. You don't have as much story impact as the person who's super fervently passionate about the thing, and then super really wants to like to express their relationship with someone else. So that's a thing that we did with Smallville. That's where it comes from. I think that's actually been very useful in the other games we've done since, where if we want to go a little more drama, we take a step back away from just pure stats and go more into this whole idea of having your values and your relationships as your two sets.
I would
I love
also
that.
throw out there another prime set that I think could work really well would be, I mean, it doesn't even need to be a prime set. You can also have like extra sets that aren't in every single role. You just add them when they're relevant. But I think affiliations would be a good way to represent your reputation, because you could have,
Mm-hmm.
your reputation with some different groups, so we can decide, what kind of the different factions, almost like, you might have a different reputation with other dungeoneers compared to with the upper crust compared with the merchants, that kind of thing. And those can represent, like, in the book here they've got like a d6 is disadvantaged. You cause more trouble, well, interacting with these people because you don't have a great reputation with them, whereas a 10, a d10 would be advantage. Your character performs really really well in situations with kind of this echelon of society. So that's another one that I think is worth considering as well.
I am
Yeah,
loving
in
all of
fact,
these so far. I'm sorry, I'm so in love with this.
something that we could consider is if relationships is not a prime set, it could be that sort of that spice that you throw into a dice roll as opposed to being required for all of them. So as Mellie was suggesting, affiliations is these are kind of the arenas that you act in. So it could be court is an affiliation, the dungeon is an affiliation, right? And the wilderness is an affiliation. You can come up with these different sort of areas that are kind of like the parts of your campaign world where people act and operate. So that if you have a D10 in the dungeon but a D6 in court, everything you do in court is going to be disadvantaged compared to everything you do in the dungeon. And so that means that you say, okay, where I want to really choose where I have this battle with this character. Hey, you should meet us in the tomb of the lost souls, because I think it's important we meet down there. Like, okay, that sounds good. You're like, ha, I am in the dungeon now, and I get my dungeon die instead of my court die, so more for you. And they're like, oh no, I've got like D4 in dungeon. I'm the worst. So that idea of the affiliation being the sort of the area in which you operate means you add that additional level of fun as a GM of saying, okay, so I'm going to offer this place for this action to happen. The scenes takes place here, and then the players are like, oh no, this is not my environment. I'm not really good here. It's the wilderness. I'm like in noble clothes and things. I can't do it. So that's fun too. So I think if you paired that up with the values, like what do you feel about like glory and love and truth and power? What are your feelings on those things? And those two together become really cool, dramatic dice sort of dice pool.
Oh, that is the glory of love. Oh, I love it.
Okay, so
So
I'm gonna
hey,
mark down for,
Mellie,
yeah.
should we talk a little bit about what the reason we have dice pools in the first place? I don't know, Danielle, how familiar you are with Cortex from what we've done previously.
Not super. This is like one of my first times using it. So I'm also learning
Yeah.
as you're teaching me this great system. It's making me really happy.
Well, cool. The easiest way to describe it is you take a die from all these different parts of your character sheet, and that becomes your dice pool. So all the things that will go into whether you succeed or fail are contributed from the dice. So whether it's an item, which we call assets, whether it's one of those prime trait sets that we talked about. So in this example, say I'm having a contest with my brother down in the dungeon, and we're having a sort of a fight because we've decided that we're going to battle over this goblet that we both found. You'd pick, the dungeon affiliation. You might pick love because it's my brother and I really want to, sort of. That's the whole thing that we're arguing about, or power perhaps. But also you might choose to pick in some other things. So your dice pool is made of all the things that will be factors in a success or fail, as opposed to just one single dice roll with modifiers or something. So that's why it's important when we look at these things like trait sets and other things is what do I want my character sheet to look like, and why do I want to have them be dice? Because they're all the things that are going to add in to my dice pool. Does that make sense, Mellie? Did I explain that well?
So if you have your brother and you and your brother are like together and you love each other, or if you and your brother are opposed to each other because you're both like trying to win the affection of your father, then those would be different affiliation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and also one thing I really like is with these relationships, if you've got a D10, it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, we're best friends. It could also mean like, we are nemesis. Like, this relationship's just that important. So when I'm gonna like throw in this relationship with my brother because I hate him so much, I get this D10. But I, throw in my buddy over here. He's a D6 because like, he's there for me. But I'm like, I know he's there for me. I don't really care. Whatever. So it just is interesting that you don't necessarily have to mean big die means that, all things are good. It can also just mean that I care so much about this.
So big die could mean like, this is my sister. Yeah. So big die could mean like, this is my sister, but she slept with my boyfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you currently feel super strongly about them.
Feeling a little bit strongly about my sister trying to court the man that I am trying to court in court.
Yes, perfect. One interesting with relationships and values that you can add on to them are statements, which are like, so hey, I've rated my value for love as a D8, and then I say in my statement for that, how does my character feel about love? Because a D8 again doesn't have to be, yeah, love is solid. Yay. It could mean something more complex than that. A D10 of love could actually be D10 love. I think that love makes people easy to manipulate. That could be a statement of love D10. So you can play around with what that means to you and how important what that means to you is. And same with relationships. You can have a statement that will tell you what you think. And then in play, you can challenge those statements. And Cam, can you tell us a little bit about challenging things?
Yeah, so normally the trait statement's good because it helps you sort of imagine for role-playing purposes what that whole connection with them is about. So if I have a D10 with my brother and it's like I believe he's sleeping around with my family, with my not family, with my partners.
Depends on the show.
True. You say that's the statement. You may have different things like like it could be my brother saved my life and I owe him everything. Or my brother is a great guy, but he is a foolish in the affairs of the heart. So the thing is, that's what guides your normal play, but then you might decide that in play, you've changed your mind about it or you're not sure about that being true. And the cool thing is when you make your character, you should try and pick trait statements that going in as a player are probably false. They're either bad first impressions, they're sort of beliefs that you've courted for a while which aren't really actually true. So that during play, when the other person behaves differently from that, or makes you think, hang on, wait, I thought you were really useless at the affairs of the heart, but you're good at this. So you can really sway people. You can challenge your belief, your statement. And when you challenge it, what it means is, for the next roll you make, you get 3 of those dice, not just the 1 in your dice pool. So you basically just triple the impact that thing has because you're challenging it. But after the dice roll, you step that die rating down by 1 point because you're like, oh, it was D10 and I have that much strength and feeling about it, but now it's D8. I'm not sure anymore. Do I really think those things? And so at the end of the game, each session, you go back to the things you challenged. And you say, do I still believe what I think in that trait statement? If so, I have to keep my die rating down because I don't feel the same way as I did before. Or do I have a different feeling about it? Is my trait statement different? If so, I can put it back up to D10 again because I do have that intensity, but I have to rewrite it. And that basically means
every game, yeah. So with every game, you're trying to like reevaluate your own values.
Yeah, your values,
Exactly.
your relationships. So,
Okay.
like, especially with a soap opera kind of thing where there's twists and you're learning things and you're discovering secrets, that might change your opinions about people like a lot. And being able to challenge those statements lets you just do that in play.
Yeah. It's
Ah,
especially good
that's
because you don't
amazing.
necessarily have to level up a lot each session. You just know that your character is going to grow because they're changing the way they think and approach things. Um, I think the other thing that would be good is if you have people make the character that they initially want to play based on their impression of how they want, but sort of create them intentionally kind of flawed or having thoughts about things that aren't necessarily what they would want, so that you kind of encourage and play to become the people that you as you play the character. Like, so the more you role play your character as being a conniving, scheming, horrible person, the more everyone else is going to change their statements about you, and the more you will become your true self, which is, I think, is a really fun thing to do.
Okay, so just so I make sure that I have this clear. So if you decide at the beginning of this, I want to play someone who eventually everyone will find out is the worst, you can actually go through and make decisions so that that winds up being in storytelling, that winds up being something that
Hmm.
comes out slowly and not that they're the worst when you first meet them.
Yeah, exactly.
Ah, love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you get
Yeah,
that,
your
and
goal is
you get
honestly
that.
those statements,
Yeah.
you should always just try to make them wrong, even when you rewrite them, because the more they're wrong, the more you get to challenge them and change and create drama. Because you're never 100% right, and other people act in ways that make you question it again, and you switch it up, and then it's just going to create all of the drama between your characters in the most delightful way.
Oh, that's great. So then everyone can come into this. And I guess that's where also secrets come into play, where it's like, well, this is my statement, but it's going to change later. And this is
Yeah.
who I feel like I am. And then we're going to challenge that, and that's going to change later. And then we're going to reveal things.
Yeah.
Ah, love it.
Yeah. And it's on two levels too, because the one trait set, the values traits, that's just sort of like, there's about 5 or 6 of those, which are kind of broad philosophical ideas about the world, love and glory and power and so forth. That's cool, and you can have statements about those. And your second set is your relationships with other characters and other GM characters as well. And you'd have a relationship with every PC, and you'd have a relationship with important NPC or GMCs that we think are going to be important in the game. And those also will change, but they're often very narrow. So, love is one of my values. My brother is a relationship. It's another thing. They can be all over the place. I could have my love is family is everything, right? Going into the game, I might
Right.
know that's totally not true. And my brother might say, my brother is the most important person in the world. And those two things stand good to start off with, but after 3 or 4 sessions, it can be completely different, and you've moved those dice all over the place.
Oh, so if you were doing, just to be fun and silly, if you were doing like a Fast and the Furious, you would come in with, this isn't, I value cars, and then at the end of it, if you're going the same way that the movies did, at the end, what you value most is family.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, that's what.
Uh, I
We
think
just had
if,
to
if
get in on the current meme, and I
I'm the worst.
I think honestly that's a game that has 3 stats only. It's Fast, Furious, and Family. You just rate whatever dice in those things, and you go from there.
that's
Exactly.
so good. I love it. Okay,
Simple.
so sounds like we've got for our prime sets affiliations, which we can call reputation if we want. So that's your reputation, your values, and then as an extra, we've got relationships. So you'll add those when you want to. So do we want to kind of talk about what you want those values and affiliations to be? Like, what are your stats? Like, what are they called in those situations? Or do we want to move on to something else? How do you feel, Danielle?
Let's move on to another point, because I feel like with something like this is going to be a very like, because I want it to be the kind of thing where everyone kind of owns on their own, because that's the way that soap operas and storytelling works for me. Let's move on to the next set.
Yeah, love it. So we've got all that. Distinctions. Let's talk a little bit more about distinctions and how those work,
Hmm.
Cam, and how you might consider putting them together for a character.
Yeah, distinctions are traits that normally start out as a D8. All three of them are D8s across the board. Every dice pool you put together is going to have one of them, and usually it's the one that makes the most sense. So if one of my distinctions is veteran knight of the realm, and I'm doing knight of the realm things, that's the die I'm going to include. Is that one? If one of them is makes a mean pot of chili, which is a very specific and narrow distinction, I would have to say. But if you do a lot of cooking in the game, that's fine. But if you're not doing anything to do with that, then you wouldn't use it. Um, the reason that there's three is because you can usually come up with one of them to be appropriate at any time. I like to have that kind of a
Mm.
well-rounded character idea. In some of the Cortex games we've been doing recently, what we've done is kind of give the players a bit of um, a help along and guide by saying, okay, make one distinction about your life before, make one distinction about something about your personality or your view on life, and make one about like people you know or the kind of groups that you tend to hang out with, so that at least you have some idea about how to make each character out that way. I don't think you have to do it that way. I think it's useful for someone who's stuck on coming up with stuff. Um,
Mm.
Distinctions are usually player created, like you write them yourself as opposed to having a list that you pick from. The other aspect of distinctions that's quite important is you kind of want to pick them where there's a positive way to use them, and then there's a way that they can get you in trouble. So the way you word
Mm.
it might be important. So if you say, former knight of the realm, you'd use that as a D8 whenever something that would help you with. If it ever gets in your way, there's a thing called a special effect, SFX, that distinctions and other traits can have. Every distinction has one SFX called hinder, which says if I use this in a way that is getting on my way, I change the die rating to a D4, not a D8, and I get a plot point
Mm.
for it. So what that means is you're deliberately making yourself be flawed in your dice pool, but you're getting some plot points, game currency for it, which is great, and it's working against you. It's in your way. So in
Okay,
the
so if your
example of that
chili
night one,
sucks.
oh yeah,
Or if
yeah.
whoever
If
you gave it to, they don't like chili. Like you made this great like beef chili and you find out this person's a vegetarian and so you're like, "Oh no,
hmm
I think I should hinder my chili."
the key element to this is that distinctions, when you hinder them, it's your choice as a player. You choose when you are going to be hindered by it. The GM does not do that. So they can suggest, like they might say, "Hey, do you think it might be cool to hinder your chili distinction because these people are all vegetarians and they're Buddhists and they hate the fact that you're doing this?" You might say, "No, I make such good chili, I'm going to completely convert them from it." So, yeah, it's your choice. Do you want to get plot points and get yourself in trouble, which is fun, or do you want to keep it at the DA that it normally is? So think of that
Mm.
distinctions as I often say it's the elevator pitch. It's who my character central sort of like story is, both in the past and in right now. But also it's a way to get uh, cool plot points by giving yourself reasons to sort of fail or do poorly in most roles.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
super
so
fun.
yeah. So do you want to go ahead and do you want to make guided ones where we say, Kate, your first one is, answer this question like X, Y, Z, is the next one this, or do we want to just have them be fill in whatever you want?
Let's do guided ones just to be sure.
Yeah. Sounds
Yeah.
good. So we're gonna have three. Uh where do we want to start? What's an important thing that every character in this game is going to have some kind of answer for that's going to be important to how they interact with this world?
Ooh, I think something that everyone's gonna have that they're gonna interact with is definitely, oh gosh, can I just say society is like a blanket role, or should I get like a little bit more um specific? Because I
So
think that
like
Well,
everyone
the
as
cool thing
in
in
is, I think it's useful that if we have these affiliations that we talked about before, where one of them could be court, another one could be the dungeon, another one that sort
Right.
of thing. That's where you are right now, but who you are could still be from a noble family, right? So yeah, your background,
Right.
your social status is a good distinction, right? Because it
Mhm.
always could
Social
be, and then
status
you
for
can use
sure.
it against yourself. You could use it in a way that's it's hindering you. Like, I'm in the dungeons underneath this town, dealing with a bunch of rogues, and I'm super wealthy from the highest upper class, everything. That's not helping me here because I'm going to get knifed. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's a great distinction. I think you should have like social status, social rank, class as a distinction category.
Yeah, so we got
Perfect.
social
Social class.
status. Yeah, social class, got it. Excellent. And then we've got, I feel like, if you have this idea of everybody was once kind of these adventures, or they are one right now, they have some kind of, role in this society, or they had one. So that might be where you want to get one from as well. Like, I'm a thief. I'm a gladiator. I'm whatever these things are. And then you can pair that with a descriptor like Cam had used one like former knight of the realm or whatever that was. Apologies if I just butchered it. But you can basically say, okay, pick a profession, quote unquote, and then pick a descriptor for it. So I'm a seductive rogue is very different than I'm a cutthroat rogue.
Mm. Because I mentioned showgirls earlier, and we'll still keep it PGs. I am an exotic dancer bard.
Yes.
Yep.
Of course.
Yep. Perfect. So yeah, so you've
Okay.
got social class, and you've got like uh, with role, right? That's is profession, I suppose, will be good.
Mm.
Okay. And then so we got social class profession, and then we have a third one. In some games, this is just kind of like this a quirk, a unique thing that makes you who you are. It can also be more specific. What stands out to you that we maybe haven't addressed yet?
Oh no, I just picked something terrible.
Oh no.
Um, uh, preternaturally good with feet.
Oh, jeez. So yeah, so you think
Sorry.
that the third distinction, it's
Should it be
it's
a
a
unique
what's
talent or a quirk?
unique talent.
Unique talent, but it would be like also like using it to, if you're in a fight, you can have like prehensile toes, almost like Nightcrawler does in X-Men, where it's like
Yeah.
I could use those to fight, and it's not just like I could crawl on all four feet. If I needed to, I could use a knife. Now you
Yeah.
have four different ways that you could use a weapon. Oh god, I'm the worst.
I like it because also unique talent just gives me this like vision of the weirdest talent show in this town.
Yeah, that was the
Where
first thing I
everybody
thought.
uses their unique talent. Oh,
The
okay, that's
reason
delightful.
the reason the third one's good, being unique talent or quality or whatever, that's good because then if everyone in the group decides to make the same social class and same character, the same profession, what keeps you from being all the same is that third one. So you could one person could be a knight, another from high society, but you've got the prehensile toes. I've got the flashing eyes that indicate doom and
We are
gloom.
all
We've all
exotic
got that
dancing
thing.
bards. What is our special talent?
Joe is gonna
Uh,
kill me.
you know, we say that, but he was requesting in the chat earlier. A mod messaged me is proposing a PG-13 showgirl setting. So I think that he
Well,
Mhm.
might be all in
we
on
done
this.
did it.
We done did it. And it's fantasy. Everybody loves a little bit of fantasy in their role-playing games. It's perfect. Uh, this is great. Okay, so we've got our trait sets. We've got our 3 prime sets, the reputation, values, distinctions. We got relationships as a bonus set. And how do we want to deal with, hey, something bad happened or you did bad? What are consequences? What do those look like in this game? Kim, what kind of consequences are kind of part of Cortex that, Danielle can start taking some inspiration from?
All right, so I'm assuming what you're talking about is complications and stress and that kind of thing. Maddie, is that correct? So this is a whole different side of the game. This is what happens during play that is the equivalent of a more other games where you take damage, right? What does damage or consequences look like in this setting? And I think we've talked about clearly it is not all about fighting each other and doing things. Pulling hair is one thing, but like cutting your throat is a different thing. Embarrassing you in public is a different thing. These are all things that can happen to you that make life miserable for you and eventually can knock you out of the game in one way or another, right? So this is the consequences. So we explore that in some games just with this thing called complications, which is it's a die rating of its own, like could be a D8, D10, D12. It's attached to you, and the opposition gets to roll it in their pool whenever they're rolling it against you, as opposed to you rolling it. So it's like it's a hindrance. If you've got a D12 embarrassed by the queen, and then you're in the queen's court somewhere, everyone who wants to roll against you with embarrassed by the queen gets to add that die in their pool, and you don't get to use it because it's not helping you; it's helping them. And so you want to get rid of those, and you don't want to get more of them. So complications come as a result of someone succeeds in a contest against you and gives you a complication. You may fail a roll and get a complication that the GM gives you, and you can get those and eventually get rid of them. But that's kind of one way of looking at the consequences. The other way that we do it quite often is we have a more themed version of that where we have this stuff called stress. And so each character has certain types of stress that they start out with no dice in, so they're fine. But as the game goes, they might get more stress, which becomes more dice. So you might have a D8 in stress of a certain kind. You might have a D12. If for some reason that die gets stepped up again past D12, which is the highest the dice can be, we don't have D20s, you see, Danielle. No D20s in this game. Once it gets past D12, you are stressed out, and which means, okay, I'm not in this scene anymore. I don't come back until somehow I get better. So whether that's you've been beaten up, or you're so embarrassed that you can't live with yourself and you just have to hide somewhere, or you're so angry you storm off, these are all kinds of stress. You can make it very simple, have it be physical, mental, and emotional stress, which is very easy to sort of like, okay, I've been hurt, I'm confused, or I'm sad. Or you can do where we break it down into certain flavors of those things. So insecure, angry, injured, exhausted, and so forth. So there's various ways you can also combine both things. You can have a game where there's complications, which are very short-term, very sort of specific themed things, and you have stress, which you also track, and either one of them can be in play at any time.
And there's a third option for stress as well, which is attaching them to traits that you already have. Like in one of the games, Hammerheads, they have a physical, mental, social attribute. So that's kind of like your standard. This is what I am stat, and then they have stress that attaches to that. So if you get stress that goes above your trait in that, you are kind of shaken, and you can only keep one die in your total, and it's going to mess you up. Um, and so that's an idea as well. If you want to be like, oh, I want to attach stress to reputation, where you can get your reputation damaged as your punishment for doing bad, is another option as well.
That was exactly what I was thinking, because it's like if we're making this character that is an exotic dancer, then obviously it's not going to be great if you try to take her trying to find a way to say this, it's PG-13. You can't make a house. So like, so if you're trying to take this person and you're trying to move them, it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to be able to move up and down the ranks. And so you might not be able to go to these tournaments or to these other things. It might be more secretive. And so a stressful event might be, I'm in public with someone who, God love him, he loves me no matter what, and he's trying to make a housewife, and he can't do, and so that and then that can be a thing where it's like, well, that's very stressful, because now you're suddenly around, like, the gentrified, the society, like things like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so then that lets you like, hey, we've done this role, like, yeah, I'm trying to fit in here. I got all Julia Roberts and Pretty Lady.
Pretty Woman,
and
exactly.
yeah, Pretty Woman. There we go. Just
Pretty
get
lady.
very famous movie titles wrong. It's great. But then you roll and you fail, and so what you get is that court stress that goes up. And now it's higher than your die, and that you only have a d6 in court, and now you've got a d8 stress. So next time you roll, you're gonna keep one less die, and so it's harder to do everything because people know you do not belong.
Yeah, no more
The
putting in the
interesting thing about
divots
this,
inside the court thing. Like there's no more.
Yeah.
She's bad at divots, and that's what gives her away.
I think what's interesting about this too is that you're kind of taking focus away from people who take damage as hit points or anything else. Because if you were doing it this way and you had, for example, the dungeon as one of your affiliations, and Mellie, I think that I almost want to sort of call them arenas as opposed to reputations, because it's like, how well do I function in those places? So how well do I function in court could be damaged or stressed out by screwing up terribly when I'm in there. But as soon as I get myself in the dungeon, I'm fine, right? But being attacked by monsters in the dungeon and everything else is awful, and I feel beaten up. That means that acting in the dungeon until I get rid of that stress, I'm worse off, right? So you can almost reflect, going off and doing something somewhere in adventures differently from your social scene.
Yeah, my stress from going to the market is that I have way less money now. I got swindled, and I'm broke.
But it doesn't affect you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting way of doing it. I do like that. I think that it's fun too, Danielle, where you have people who have become fish out of water in very interesting ways. But
I love a fish out of water story.
Yeah, well, it's fun to fail dice sometimes. I mean, you don't always have to roll and succeed. I think it's fun to see where the dice take you. And I always recommend people, don't always pick your best stats. Don't always roll for the best things. Try something else.
Yeah, do what's interesting. Do what's exciting. All right, so we now have these characters. We've got what happens when you don't do well. We've got these arenas that we, scenes take place in, all these different things. I feel like, is there something with characters, Danielle, that we haven't hit on yet that you really want to make sure that we hit on? Or do you want to move on to something else?
I mean, just the idea that like the most scummy people, I think for me, are going to be the overclass. Like they're going to be the rich people. Obviously, like everyone else is just like working hard. Like Our Lady is working and she's a sex worker and she's doing great. And like everyone else is like these, like, I think, is there a way to make the society, like, with all of the people who are in the above more oppressive? Is there a way that we can like weight them so that's because that's ultimately they're the worst people. So okay, I'm not sure.
I have one idea. Cam, you looked like you might have had an idea as well.
I want to hear your ideas first, and
we'll see. Okay, sure.
Yeah,
my idea is that you can have there's I have two ideas now. Oh no. So one is that you can have a class die, I guess you could call it, which can be up from a D4 to a D12. And so it's this extra die that you have that represents your status in society. So if you are the very, very top, you got a D12, which means you are much more powerful. My other idea is using something that's called resources. And resources are dice that get added separately. So you get to keep 2 dice for your total typically. And resources, you decide to commit them and you roll them separately and you take the highest one and add it to those 2 dice. So you end up with like, hey, with my 2 d8s, I ended up getting a 9. And I committed these 2 d6s of these resources. I roll them. Okay, highest one's a 4. So now I got a 13 instead of a 9. So those are my two ways I might consider doing that. Cam, what do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking something similar, because Mellie and I have simpatico brainwaves, apparently. One of the things I was thinking is that you have this idea that it's kind of like it's called scale, right? Scale is a thing where if I'm totally if I outclass you because I'm a gigantic mecha robot and you're a little person, there's no way you can hurt me, but there's a slim chance, but I have the advantage, right? That's where I get to keep 3 dice in my total instead of the 2 I normally get to keep when I'm rolling my dice. Because that's what happens. You roll your dice, even if you got 10 dice in your pool, you pick 2 dice out of them, add them together. That's your total. That's how Cortex works. If you have scale over someone else, you get to keep 3 dice into your total, which automatically means you have a better situation than that. You may have it so that scale works like that in the game. You can have it be class-based, which I think is really interesting. However, you could have a thing where you end up having it so that if you can assert that if you are in a certain arena than someone else, you could say, my arena is higher than yours. We're in the dungeons now, you're in my town. If your arena die is higher than someone else's in the opposition, then you get to have scale against them. So you could have court or market or business or whatever, depending on what these different things are. I think it might be interesting to do that, but what I'm hearing, though, is that it's not necessarily true. I mean, it's cool that people can go into the dungeon and fight better. That's perhaps reflected more by the fact that your dungeon die rating is higher. But that the overall effect is that class does matter more than anything. And so, really, I think that Mellie's idea of having a class die, and then having, if you compare your class die to someone else's class die, and if it's the same, you don't get to use the die at all. It doesn't get added to your dice. It's fine. If it's different, like if yours is bigger, you add it to your pool, and they add theirs to their pool, but you get to keep 3 dice, and they get to keep 2. So, you
just to be clear on that one. So that would be, if you are higher class, you would get more dice.
You would get,
because with this one, I want to have a way that they can be a little bit more equal, because I would like if there was a way, and again, we've got different situations where if we put them into a dungeon or if we put them in different areas, like some are going to be better than others. But I do want there to be a way that we can do a little bit of nerfing on some of the upper class, just because they are the worst.
Yeah. So one way that might be interesting to do this, because you can make it where, they're upper class and it seems like they're untouchable because, that person's got a D10 and I'm over here with my D6. So like if I get up with them, society's on their side. But it could be interesting with this idea is, hey, if you've added these dice, that means we have different levels, so we're adding them, but you've got the higher ones, that means you get to keep 3, I only get to keep 2. But if I win, yours steps down and mine steps up because I just embarrassed you.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yes. And here's the thing. You could choose not to... If you don't include your scale die in the pool, you don't risk it, right? So maybe if you're a noble with D12, you don't use it. You might, I don't want to lose this, but I'm willingly not taking the extra D12 into my dice pool, which is a big die, because I'm worried you'll take it from me, right? So that's cool. That's a cool choice to make.
Oh, I love that so much. That's so great. Because it's also like at the end of the day, it exposes them as cowards.
Yeah. Yeah, you have that, and you have the ability to be like, you know what? I'm saving up all my plot points because I know I'm meeting with the king later, and I'm gonna get that D12. I'm gonna step that thing down. I just know it. I just feel like that
also
would be
encourages
so fun to just strategize around.
It encourages people to take on the rich, right? It takes them to take on that people. That's really cool. Yeah.
Oh God, I love that so much. That's great.
However, the problem is, if you get too uppity, the problem is you may end up replacing them and being the high status thing, and everyone else comes to get you. So you got to be careful about what you do with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like a balance
climbing
of power.
up until you become the man.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind
of overthrow the system. Delightful. Okay, so now we have this class die, or this whatever you want to call. Do you have a name you really want to call that, Danielle?
Ooh, a name that I really want to call that. I'm gonna censor myself again. It's the you ain't die.
Excellent. Okay, so
is that the yes die? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Excellent.
Uh,
Okay. I think is there anything else that we haven't touched on for the player characters that you're like, we need to cover this?
No, I feel good. I feel really good.
Yeah.
This is really fun.
I also I'm excited. I'm already like, yes, when are we playing? Because I want to play this game. It's so great.
mhm.
Uh Cam, what's the next step? So we have player characters now. We've kind of started to put this world together around them. What would be our next step?
I would say what we should consider now is if you're moving over to the job of the GM, like I was saying earlier, the main role the GM plays in games like this is to introduce situations, set the scene for the players, say, okay, you're in this place and you're in this place, you're with each other. And then they can try to bring a game moderator character, a GM character, into this situation to try and get between people and force them into some kind of conflict or give them a reason to do something and kind of sort of stir things up. So any situations that you're playing with is going to be charged in one way or another, right? I think we should look about how do you want those sorts of things to be um, done? Do you want there to be like um, GM characters who are like almost the equivalent of the PCs in a way, and kind of their own sort of potential
Mm.
movers and shakers, or do you want there to be threats or more ambiguous kinds of things? Because there's a thing that we want to talk about, which is the difficulty, and there's a thing called the Doom pool, which may often be useful in this. But I don't want to go in that just right now. I just think, how do you want most scenes to go down? If you're the GM, how do you want to sort of do it?
Oh, well, if I'm the GM, I want to torture people. If I'm the GM, then I want them to I want most of the characters to be, you know, have them play important roles like player characters were, definitely, because I want them to, if we've got people who, because I'm the kind of player where it's like I am a sniper, where I'll
Yeah.
just shut up and not say anything until it's time for me to do something, and then I'll come in, say something funny, and then skadoots back out. And I need someone to take control of me and make me do things, especially as a bard, because when I play a bard, oh, baby knows she's going to talk her way out of a situation, and it's like, no, we're going to have to actually fight now. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think having them be more, just because of the way that the society in this is set up, it's going to have to be more of a player character situation.
Yeah.
I just made a
Yeah,
game that would be
so
hard for me to play, but I want to play it against other
but hey,
people.
uh I think that there's a great solution for this in Tales of Xadia, the Dragon Prince role playing game that Cam you came up with this really great mod that I love to bits and pieces called Catalysts. That might be a solution here. What are catalysts, Cam?
A catalyst is a character who starts out maybe not terribly important to the story, but over time, the more that the players interact with them, the more the catalyst grows stronger and becomes either an ally or an antagonist, and can become a really great person in the story as in terms of being sort of a mentor or a sponsor or patron, or they could become the big bad. And it depends on the
Mm.
way that the players decide what they want to do. So they're a little bit more simple than player characters. They have values and they have other kinds of they have distinctions as well, but they have a single die called a catalyst die, which gets bigger and bigger, and then eventually it becomes a D12, which means, hi, I'm actually also starring has gone. I'm now with on the credits, with my character. I'm the person. Um, so the thing that I think is useful is that most of the time you as a are trying to put against each other because that's the whole central conflict. These people are all just like beat each other up with various means of social and physical kind of right. You don't want that; wouldn't make much fun. But the way to make it interesting is you also have to have these important characters start growing out of the story and becoming more important as time goes on because they're a love interest, because they're a sponsor of some kind, they're a rival, they're whatever.
There's
And then the
somebody's
different
brother that
players,
just came back from the dead.
yes, the players,
They're
it's,
twins with amnesia.
it's true. And all this gets revealed in play. But the cool thing is that the players, each individual, will have their own relationship with that character and will have their own feeling about them. And so my antagonist, Nemesis, could be your absolute dreamboat love interest. And that's the same
Oh.
character, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's
Oh.
a cool thing. And everybody else is just like, you just role play them as whatever. They're just minor characters. It's not that
Yeah, you give
important to
them
get into a fight with them.
you give them a few traits that just, have a dice value associated with them. Like, yeah, this is a helpful D8 baker, D10 chili cook-off king, D10 and whatever. And then when you're gonna roll and you're using this GMC against people, you can be like, or to help people, you throw in those dice, and that's gonna be what that is. And then with these catalysts, it's like this is an important person that has the ability to really impact the game. These are the I think Cam describes them as movers and shakers in the rule book for Tales of Xadia. And the nice thing with these is when you do a contest with them. So that's again that kind of main conflict there, where I want something, I don't want you to have that. We're gonna do a contest. If they win, it means they're more interesting because they've now one-upped you on this. So they're that catalyst die is gonna step up. They're becoming more important. If they lose, if somebody just loses all the time, you're like, okay, you're not that interesting, and that catalyst die steps down. So if they go from like D4 to nothing, it's like, well, that character's just they weren't that interesting because we just wiped the floor with them at court, or we just completely over bargained them at the market. Whereas if they go up past a D12, you're like, oh, you're
I want to throw a wrinkle
extremely
here, Mellie.
significant.
Something that isn't really necessarily going to happen in Tales of Xadia, but would definitely happen in Danielle's game, is that okay? So we just had a scene where my character totally belittled this person who was the new the new romancing kind of character in the story, right? I belittled them. I've dropped their catalyst die down to a D6. Haha, I'm done with you. The GM then says, okay, well now we have a scene with Danielle's character and this person. Danielle, do you want them to become insignificant nobody, guest star this episode, and then leaving from now on? Do you really like this person? And so we as players are competing over these people to make them more significant. And that could be really fun. Like, no.
So it's not just
I don't want to. I'm raising them up.
Oh, that's like
it's not just our
to take it back to TV. Yeah, that's amazing. It's like how on Buffy, Spike was only supposed to be in a couple of episodes, and then all of a sudden Spike became one of the main characters because they were so important. And so, yeah. Oh, love it.
So
yes,
at least one of the players
to that.
said, one player says, no, they're going to be important. I'm going to have lots of scenes with them and make them better. And every other table's like, oh no, why are you doing this? That's not fun.
And I feel like we've all had players that like latch on to an NPC and are just like, where are they? We came back to town. Where are they? I need to find them. And you're like, they were just a cart drive. They just drive a cart. No, I know there's something more important about them, and I'm going to uncover it because they're my favorite person. And this is the mechanic for that.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that.
My wife, when we were playing, used to call them Freds because she didn't know how to make up a name for them, so she would call them like, Fish Vendor Fred or Dungeon Basher Fred or whatever. So we had this idea of Freds, right? And Freds were people that my wife decided were so important to the game that she would adopt them as her NPCs. And we ended up having like numerous. And I'm like, no, it's just a person selling you armor. No, but it's armor seller Fred. I'm going to go back to him next time and ask him some questions about whether, like. So yeah, I love this idea. I think players creating the game as we go along by investing in these characters who may have just been throwaways to begin with is very cool. Yes, absolutely go that direction.
It also doesn't help that, of course, your wife just keeps falling in love with you over and over again as a player character.
That's true.
Romancing the Freds. That's like a Harlequin novel.
Yes.
And so great these catalysts, because I mean you can have these other, again, these GMCs that are just these handfuls of traits But if a player is like, I'm attaching to this person, I want them to be important, you can make them a catalyst. You can be like, okay, cool. This person suddenly became important, so they're a catalyst now. So I'm going to give them these extra traits. They don't have to stay one thing, and a catalyst becomes
Yeah, you
less
can
important.
promote them.
You can go back to being a regular kind of GM character. So you have flexibility with how you treat them.
I love this. Yes, yes, yes. More of that.
Okay, well, I think we've got our player characters. We also have kind of the main ways that the GM is going to interact with this game. Danielle, are there things that you're like number one when we go into next week or part 2 that you're like, we need to make sure that we cover this? I need to make sure that we're figuring out what the rules are for this.
I think we're covered. Y'all are such good guides. I can't believe it. Joe Starr was like, because I was like, I'm going to mess this up for you, Joe Starr. And Joe Starr was like, no, you will not believe how good they are at taking you through this. And as always, I should have trusted Joe Starr and known that you were really good at taking me through this. I feel really informed, and I can't wait until next week or until we do this again.
Heck yes. Okay, I'm super duper excited. So we are going to come back to this incredible setting next week. We're going to kind of go into, there's some other things that Cam and I will introduce to you next time that we can go ahead and play with. And hey, next time, let's also think about these values and these arenas. What do we want to call them all? What are the names? There's a fun little challenge here that we've given to Eliza Pearl and Jasmine Bhullar, which is alliteration.
I love alliteration. Oh, I am alliteration. That is my jam. Right?
Excellent.
It's so good.
I made myself very proud recently. I had a game that I made that had 10 skills and they all start with the same letter. And I was like, yes, Cam would be so proud.
Yeah, you get a medal.
Yeah. So think about that. And next week, we're going to come back to this amazing setting. We're going to keep building it. Hey, if you want to come up with a name for it, unless you already have one, for next time, we can do that as well. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so delightful. I desperately want to play this game already.
Me too.
Danielle, where can people find you on the internet if they, like me, need more of you right now?
Oh, geez. Well, if you need more of me, I am currently one of the player characters on Dimension 20's Misfits and Magic. We're calling it Mismatch because there's also Mice and Murders. So you can find it under under Misfits and Magic or under Mismatch because we like naming things that way. So we did 2 episodes. We've got 2 episodes left. Other than that, you can find me on Fandom, SJU. I'm on there on Mondays, and then on Tuesdays when we do Honest Trailer commentaries. I'm one of the writers of the Honest Trailers, so go watch them. I think they're pretty good. People seem to like them.
So good. I feel like the only bad thing about Mismatch so far, I just watched the 2nd episode yesterday, is that it's only going to be 4 episodes. And I'm very sad about that because I'm already in love with everything that is happening. It makes me so happy. It's so good.
Can I give you a little thing? I named the pig that's on there. For those of you who don't know, her name is their name is Terminator 2. I was gonna name my cat Terminator 2, and I gave it to the show.
Wow.
Like in the middle of it when I was doing it. No. In the middle of it when I was like thinking of doing a thing, I was like, you know what? The show gets this one. And so instead I've got Rips and Hudson.
Oh, and I love it so much. The little pig T2 makes me so happy. Just the entire thing. I can't see what happens. Those of you, if you haven't watched it yet, do it. The 2nd episode just came out yesterday, and it's so super good. And it's only gonna be 4 episodes, which means like, yeah, it's gonna be sad because it's only 4 episodes, but it also means that it will be very easy to binge watch all of them multiple times, probably. I can't wait to see what happens next. Cam, where can people find you on the internet?
As always, you can find me on the Twitter at BoyMonster, and you can find me on the IG at Rusty Sellsword. I am 2 different people in 2 different places. And also, you can find me on the Discord for Cortex RPG. Please come find us there. I will often jump in there, start a fight, and then leave. It's been great.
Yeah,
Love-
Cam is very violent, as we all know. And I am Mellie, and you can find me on Twitter at MellieDM and also in the Discord. This has been lovely. I cannot wait for you to join us again next week, and hopefully, in sometime in the future, we'll get to play this amazing game. Thank you all for watching. Go ahead and share your thoughts on this over on the tweeters and those other places in the Discord everywhere. And we will see you all next week, same time, 3 p.m. PT, for the next episode of Roll and Keep Cortex Clinic. Have a good one.